welcome to this week's episode of Paranormal Living. Today we are joined by author Nick Pease, the author of the book Revelation, and today we're going to interview him, and we've got a few questions regarding the book and also Nick's mediumship, so we can't wait. So if you've got any questions, any comments, please do leave them, and we'll try our best to work through all of them and get through them. So, Nick, a little introduction for you. So you're an author and a medium, you say. When did that start for you?
Oh, well, the whole thing started when I was a young child. I was literally only about 5 years old when I heard my first spirit presence. It was the spirit of a young girl who had passed in the house in which my family was living at the time. And it terrified the life out of me.
Was that the one in the end of the book? Was that the female? Was it the seamstress?
Yeah. I put it in. There's a bit at the end of the book for people who might pick it up from the author, which is my bit, which explains a bit about me. And that really set me off on this whole journey of questioning what life is about. And I realized very early on in life, without necessarily understanding it, obviously, when you're a 5-year-old child,
of course,
there really is more to this life than meets the eye. And it's not explained in traditional philosophies, traditional religions. They don't really touch upon it enough, and it's regarded as something one shouldn't get involved in. And that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted to learn more. So it set me off on a lifetime's quest of searching. And I will be doing that quest until the day I die, because, as you know, you never end up.
Absolutely.
But it's a fascinating journey because, obviously, then in my teens, I started to actually see spirits as well. And this became a very natural part of my life, that I was obviously clairaudient and clairvoyant, and indeed clairsentient, come to that. And I wanted to learn more about what is this all about then. There's clearly more to the everyday than meets the eye. And I wanted to really subject that to forensic analysis. And that's what led me to study philosophy and get a degree in philosophy, because there is no more study which is more analytical, more forensic, more skeptical than philosophy.
I believe so.
And I wanted to do that because I wanted to say, look, the whole thing about philosophy is it really does study the nature of existence and knowledge and what we know, our part in this world, and the huge subjects which most people perhaps don't spend any time really thinking about. But to me, they were always very important. So I did that. I then went and sat in Circle at the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain in London to develop as a fully fledged medium, so that those natural abilities that I clearly recognised, I was able to then put them into fruition. And from then on, I just have spent my whole life taking a great interest in scientific developments, religion, philosophical thought, and all of this I bring into my book Revelation. Now, although it's a thriller and you can read it purely at face value as a thriller, it embodies very much. There's a lot of philosophical, religious, spiritual thought in there that goes quite deep into these things, which I hope people will find fascinating, because virtually everybody in life is fascinated by the whole subject of life after death. And so this is treated within a thriller format, so that whilst it's an exciting ride, it's full of action, romance, humour, you name it, at the end of the day, it also has quite a bit of depth to it, I believe. So that, in a nutshell, Lorna, is sort of who I am.
That was a brilliant explanation, I must say. But you can really tell, like you say, you mentioned, within the book that it has all these elements to it. But yet there's a deeper meaning behind it all, and that it's really interesting, that you can, like you say, read it at face value, or if you somebody believes in sort of the paranormal, extra things like that. That's really interesting. My next question is, there's some great sort of characters in there. You've got Linda, you've got Frank, you've got Jack. Are any of those based off real people? Anybody you know? I know if I were to write a book, I'd maybe try and do a few honourable mentions.
Funnily enough, they're not based on specific individuals, though they are kind of the culmination of just observing. I love to observe people and situations and everything, and they embody a lot of those aspects. And so my main protagonist, Jack, for example, he's quite a complex character. And I think one of the great things when you're writing, or indeed in anything, whether you're doing music or art or film or whatever, I love ambiguity. I think ambiguity really gains an interest with audiences, because they don't want characters to be just black and white and one dimension. They like the fact that Jack has done this incredible thing, and yet he's still full of self-doubt and contradictions.
Almost a bit of naive sort of, towards it.
Naive is a good word, Lorna. That's it. That's exactly it. And he needs Linda to help him along his way, which is why she
sort of the reassurance that what he is doing is in fact the right decisions to make.
Exactly. But some characters like Frank, I suppose, to some extent, there was a program about the White House many, many years ago with a brilliant actor called Robert Vaughn, who played the White House Chief of Staff in that series. And I kind of almost, that had resonated in my mind, and I kind of had him partly in mind. And Frank interested me because, again, he's not just black and white, although yes, he ends up being the leader of the people who end up trying to terminate Revelation and Jack. In the early stages of the book, we see that he's full of contradictions as well, and is quite
absolutely
at how events overtake him. And then you bring in other characters like Jason, who is a fun, humorous character to add that element. You've got Ed Bishop, who is that sort of old sage style.
You've got sort of the perfect mix within all the characters.
It's all there,
brilliantly put together.
The wonderful old hippie Martha who was at Woodstock.
There was one particular part, and I loved it, and it was the funeral when everybody turns up, and it's saying people had the black umbrellas and stuff, but Martha still turned up sort of true to the roots in like a rainbow coloured dress and things like that. And I really enjoyed that part. As sad as it was.
I'll tell you something a bit spooky, but because this is what this program is about. When I named one of the main protagonists, Marty, I wanted Marty to have been conceived during the Woodstock Festival, which those people who'll read the book will understand why. And I wanted it, I knew the Who had played there. I didn't know a great deal about what had happened, but I wanted him conceived in between two acts, as it were, as a humour and everything. And I already knew his name was Marty. It was like given to me, as indeed most of the book was when I came to write it, and maybe we'll come in, because it was talk about automatic writing. I couldn't write fast enough. It was when I sat down, I didn't write at the computer. I had a notepad, and literally my hand couldn't write fast enough. The ideas and the whole thing was
everything
being
that you wanted to get down and get out.
By spirit. But I always knew it was given to me at the very early stages. I knew his name was Marty, so I didn't want to lose that name. And I thought, well, he Martha and her deceased husband now would have conceived him in between two acts. So I researched the two acts in between one evening, in between the Who and Jefferson Airplane, and I thought, that's good. Now, please, can his name be Marty? And lo and behold, the lead singer, the founder of Jefferson Airplane, his name was Marty.
Oh, wow.
It's one of those things that just sends shivers up your spine.
Wow, that is incredible.
yeah, you know you're being led, and um, the whole experience for me was very emotional, to be honest. Putting the whole book together, and it
Hmm.
speaks because it embodies, as we've already talked about, it embodies my whole life's learning of philosophy, spirituality, developing as a spiritual medium, taking an interest in religion and science, and bringing all that into one book, albeit as a thriller. And I don't think, without nothing's unique as such, but I've not come across anything that has been able to do that from the point of view of somebody who has that kind of perspective on life
No,
and
I
depth
absolutely
of
understand you
understanding.
there.
So yeah, the characters were great fun to write, and I love them all, as you would when you're the author. You get right under their skin, and they're all there for different reasons. They all play a different role. They all they all bring something to bear. So it was a joy to write.
I mean, sort of on to Revelation as well as the machine. Do you think possibly one day we will ever be able to prove life after death scientifically? You know, as saw the book.
Yes, yes, I do, Lorna. It may not be within my lifetime, but that doesn't matter. I have a wider perspective on life, as I'm sure you do when you have a spiritual perspective.
Absolutely.
Um, but yes, I do. And the reason for that is because of the developments in science that we're now understanding more and more about how everything in the universe is made up of energy. And you cannot destroy energy. And spirit existence exists on a different energetic plane. And the whole concept of revelation is this machine which, quite by accident, suddenly picks up the level of high vibrations upon which spirit existence takes place. And of course, those who understand more about spirits recognize that there are many levels of spirit existence. It's not just us here and one dimension over there. There are many, many dimensions, but everything exists within energy. And we all know we're sitting on chairs at the moment, which to us are solid, but actually they're not. They're just billions of subatomic particles
Absolutely.
vibrating together to create this solid substance. And in the same way, spiritual vibrations take place at an energetic frequency much, much higher than ours. And I remember when I was sitting in circle at the SAGB, we learned how to, through meditation, reach that level of communication through trying to bring together the two dimensions, if you like, of the higher spiritual vibration and the lower human existence, because we do exist on a much lower frequency, as I'm sure you appreciate. So yes, short answer, I do believe one day it could be possible if science turns its attention to wanting to develop a machine that can develop more knowledge about energetic frequencies. And I think it will happen probably almost like it happens in my book, that Jack and Marty are conducting experiments for a top secret program called Revelation for the CIA, which fails. But later, working on their own, quite by accident, they make Revelation work, and it proves 100% that life after death is a fact. And I think that's how it will happen. Most of science, and indeed, when you read Revelation, there are many scientific references in there, like Newton with the falling of the apple and all that kind of thing. When Ed says humorously to Jack, "You think Newton deliberately shook the tree?" In other words,
I remember that part. Yeah, there are another reference as well.
These things happen by accident, and I think it will happen by accident. Science is working on energetic discoveries more and more and more for all kinds of things, whether it's space exploration or understanding more about our physical environment, etc., or indeed solving environmental issues. And I think it will happen by accident, and what a wonderful thing that will be. And I hope, Revelation ultimately, without giving the game away, does have a very life-affirming conclusion. And I think once you accept the spiritual reality of life, it can only have a positive effect on how we live our lives.
Oh, absolutely. I was reading earlier on online on the reviews of it. They are fantastic. It's such a highly rated book, but as well, like you were saying, if that was true to the case, and one day we do, eventually have something that can prove it, a lot of people are saying they found comfort within the book as well, in hopes that one day such thing might exist.
Yeah,
so that was really nice.
Well, I would hope so, and I do like to think that revelation will inspire people, bring comfort to people, make them happy, make them joyful, and give them hope. At the moment, you can only really get that kind of glimpse into the reality by visiting a medium, and you have to be very, very careful. You have to visit somebody who really is a genuine
absolutely.
There are, as we all know, there are many people out there who are not doing it for the right reasons or anything.
The con artists of the spirit world.
Yeah, I don't make my living through doing mediumship or anything like that. I have a very busy lifestyle as an advertising copywriter. That's my main career. So this is outside of that, and I just say that if people do go and see a medium, I hope they would go and see a very genuine one who's a spiritual medium and has the right credentials and credibility. But if you do, and I myself have had the most incredible evidence given to me from some of the great mediums I sat with 30 years ago or more, a long time ago now, but they were absolutely amazing. And once you've had that, you can never see life again in the same way, because you just accept that. Well, I had to accept it, obviously, from when I was 5 years old, because it hit me in the face, literally.
Absolutely, they must have been, you couldn't deny what happened.
I couldn't escape it. So for me, it was like 2 + 2 = 4. Look, this is reality. There are other dimensions. There are other things happening. So I hope it does bring comfort to people. No,
sorry to interrupt you there, Nick. We've got some questions coming through on the Facebook, and that is, he believes, we've got one comment, that's Aaron Grant, and he said he believes we start living when we die. What would you say to that, Nick? What's your opinion?
I think it's before that. I think we are spirit before we come into this world. We are spirit when we are in this world, and we return to spirit when we go on. But I understand the sort of underlying nature behind that question. There are some of the ancient cultures believe that this is the dream world, and we sort of return to reality. And I have to say, I have some sympathy with that view. I know when I've been in meditation and I've had a really wonderful deep meditation, and you come out of it and you think, wow, I was in the real world. This is something else. This is a very different existence. But no, we come from spirit, we are spirit, we return to spirit. And I think, yes, you're right in a sense. It's not that you start living when we die, it's you continue living, and you continue living with the lessons that you've learned in this life, and you take them with you on your eternal development.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the ancient cultures that believed this and understood it still do.
I mean, obviously, before, no, it's quite alright, don't worry. A lot of people think that even before we were sort of consciously, knowing that we were alive, we are still very much alive and there. So it wouldn't surprise me if, the same carries on once we go, in a certain sense. I mean, we're all here, like you say, to sort of prove that there is more to the afterlife than just simply nothingness. And it's I've got another question that says, I've seen people use spirit boxes. Do you think we could have a phone to the afterlife as such?
What was that? Do you think?
It says, I've seen people use spirit boxes. Do you think we could have a phone to the afterlife? Sort of like a constant way of sort of a communication to people who have passed.
Oh, to communicate. Well, that's a big subject. Communication, if you're going to develop properly and communicate with spirit, it has to be done in a very controlled way. You do have to protect yourself. This is why sitting in circle at somewhere like the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain in London is so valuable, because you do need to control it. You need to protect yourself. There are unenlightened spirits. There are I won't call them evil, but sort of darker forces. There are people, there are spiritual entities who can form attachments to you, etc. So if you are going to attempt communication, this is why Ouija boards as well can be so dangerous in the hands of
Absolutely,
young
of people who aren't aware of,
yeah, you're not
the
aware of
negative
what
side and the things that can go wrong.
What you're dabbling in. You have to be careful because the darker elements, and I'm not going to use the word evil because that has so many bad connotations, but there are darker, unenlightened elements who still cling to the earth plane, and therefore, when you open yourself up, might be the easiest to come into your orbit. So you do have to know how to develop properly, how to protect yourself, how to take place, and to test it, so that you know that it is true. You know, one of the things that always attracted me to spirituality, and by the way, I don't even call myself a spiritualist because I don't like labels. I think they cause so many divisions in our world, and just if you're not part of my club, I don't like you or whatever. That just is a complete nonsense to me. We're all human beings. We're all born in love. We should all love each other, get on with each other and everything. It's a total nonsense to me. But having said that, in terms of developing, when you open yourself up, one of the things that attracted me to the spiritual way of life is when the guides and helpers would come through. They didn't just say, believe this or do that because we're telling you. They said, test us, examine us. If anything we tell you offends your reason, reject it. And I thought, hallelujah, at last, people who are willing to actually, put their money where their mouth is, as it were, and say, don't just accept it because there's some guy standing up in a pulpit in a flowing robe telling you that this is this and this is that, and if you don't believe it, you're going to go to hell or something like that. Total nonsense, total fabrication to control the people. It's there for all of us. The ancient cultures understood that spiritual communication is natural. It's open to everybody if they want it. But it has to be controlled. It has to be even like people like the Native Americans would have their shamans and people who would control that communication because they know that it can be abused. It can open you to darker elements, and you have to be very careful. I'm sorry, long answer to the question.
No, absolutely. It's very interesting. Please do go on. I'm sure.
I'm careful about things like using, voice boxes or whatever you might. They can work, but my goodness, I would hope you'd have somebody, like a spiritual medium present to guide you in using these things. And if you did have a good spirit medium with you, then one could argue you don't need them anyway because it's going to happen perfectly naturally. But for anybody, please be careful. There are unenlightened beings, existences, spirit beings, whatever, that can be drawn to you, and some of them can cause mischief. We all know about poltergeists. Some can attach to you without you knowing and start trying to influence you, etc. So, but if you protect yourself, you always strive to be in the light, you surround yourself with love, and you always ask your guides and helpers to be with you and protect you and guide you along your true path. Honestly, there is nothing to fear.
That's a brilliant answer. I really enjoyed that. Very interesting. We've got another question through already, which is, where can you buy the book? Now, we got it sent to us very lovely by Nick, but I do believe you can get it from, I believe, W.H. Smith's, Amazon, Goodreads.
I think it's, at the moment, it's certainly online. You can get it at Amazon. If you go on various bookstores on their online shops like Waterstones, you'll get it online. It's not in many bookshops at the moment. I've been into various bookshops and they are interested in the book because it's a subject matter that fascinates everybody, but it's so hard to get a presence in actual bookshops. They can order it in for you. Certainly, if you go in and say Revelation by Nick Pease, can you order it in? They can order it, or you can get it from the publishers, Cranthorpe Milner. So if you go on cranthorpemilner.com, you'll certainly be able to order it direct a nice pristine copy from the publishers. But I would say go on Amazon or some of the bigger online bookstores, and you'll certainly be able to find it.
Brilliant. And I have some more questions about the book now. One that really interests me. Why was it written in the USA instead of, was that just somewhere that you've been before and you've loved it? I mean, the descriptions of the places.
What's an English writer doing writing? But then you could say of anything. It's like, why do Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov write about outer space? Why does John le Carre?
That's very true.
Why does John le Carre write about the KGB headquarters in Moscow? It's like you set it where you think it will have its greatest impact. And for me,
the government element of it as well. I mean, because obviously it's very heavily influenced within the book.
That's exactly it. I knew that I already had the ending of Revelation in my mind, and I'm not going to give it away, but I knew it would need to have real gravitas. And for that, I wanted the ending to involve the leader of the free world, in other words, the President of the United States. So that immediately framed me in the Washington, D.C. sort of mindset. And so I thought, that's where I'm going to be. That's where I'm going to set it. I'm a bit of a fan of America, though I say it myself, always have been. I know no country is perfect, and they'll probably readily admit it themselves, but I think there's so much that's very positive about it as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to go.
Yeah, Revelation for me, the development of Revelation, which of course it starts during the Iraq War, because the purpose of the secret program that Jack and Marty are working on for the CIA is to develop a device which can reveal the energetic structure of all matter. So in other words, you could, far more enhanced than heat devices or anything like that, you could identify improvised explosive devices, landmines, etc. through this Revelation device. Now, they failed to do that, and that's why Jack and Marty squirrel away equipment and for their own interest start just experimenting to see if they can get close to it. And those who haven't read the book will have to read the book as to why Marty in particular is very interested in taking Revelation in a particular direction. And indeed it does, by accident, prove scientifically the reality of life after death. So the whole thing for me was, yes, set it in America. That will give me my framework of starting in combat theatre as to why the device was set up in the first place. It can give me all the intrigue I need, all those dirty tricks, the CIA shenanigans, all the characters that come into it, like the sheriff, for example, and then of course ultimately leading to, I wanted the conclusion to be at the very highest level, and for that I needed the President of the United States.
Yes.
Who, by the way, I was very happy to make a black woman. And you asked earlier, Lorna, did I have anybody in mind about character? Not really, but of course, inevitably, when you write a character like that, I did sort of kind of reference Michelle Obama in my mind, as she would be perhaps the epitome of who that character might be. And particularly because she has a very sympathetic side to her.
Brilliant. So I've got another question, and then I have one more. I have another one in the chat already. So I mean, after sort of the success from Revelation, is there a sequel in the works? Is there anything that, obviously you mentioned Revelation sort of came to you in different ways. So is there anything that's started something else, another project maybe?
Yeah, I'm and this touches on, your podcast is called Paranormal Living, and I'm very into all aspects of paranormal, although I test them all. As I said earlier, I don't just accept things. I'm still a philosopher at heart, so I will subject everything.
It's a great way to go around it, though. I enjoy that.
Yeah,
I like that side.
Subject everything to skeptical forensic analysis. So don't just accept things. But having said that, through my own experiences and everything, yes, I've got 2 or 3 other ideas for books.
Oh wow, that's fantastic.
And they will always have some kind of spiritual nature to them, because that's, after all, what I'm about. That's where my expertise lies. That's where my knowledge lies, and I bring to bear. I'm not just bringing spirituality, I'm bringing philosophical thought, I'm bringing knowledge about scientific developments, I've studied the world's religions, for example. I'm bringing that knowledge as well. So it's a real combination of aspects, every aspect of life, and then framing it within an interesting story. Like Revelation is a thriller, and it's full of action, and you could it's a very fast read. They're short chapters. They're carries you along at pace, and I would intend to write the same thing. I think the front runner at the moment is something to do with reincarnation, because that subject fascinates me, and I've had so many examples of it happen. And I've had very good friends who are total skeptics to all this, which I love. I love people who are skeptics, and then something happens to them.
It is the
oh
best,
my word! How on earth did that happen? With one friend in particular who had the most extraordinary experience, which I might even use the adaptation of that as my opening scene in my next book, because it's just so extraordinary about reincarnation. And so these subjects, because as I put on the fly leaf in my book Revelation, I use that wonderful quote from Shakespeare: "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." We really are so small in terms of what's out there, and not just in terms of the physical realms, but the whole what our place in the universe, our place within the animal kingdom and everything. And I use some of this, as you know, Lorna, in the book. It doesn't lecture, it doesn't preach or anything like that. I would hate to ever be accused of that. But what it does do is, in a roundabout way, using the characters themselves. For example, when Ed and Linda are walking through his garden, and I use that as a setting in which Ed then says there's no such thing as the supernatural, because they're looking at a cat stalking its prey, and how it's doing it through senses that we can't even guess at. And then he talks about how animals have a much heightened sense of awareness than us. And I remember within our philosophy studies, when we looked at how we come to this world, and we frame our world in terms of the 5 senses, what we can see, hear, touch, taste, smell, etc.
Yeah, I remember this in reference to the dogs,
my last
the
bit,
bats, the eagles.
Exactly. That's how I put that in the very end from the author in that piece. And I said, well, just consider there are many ways of interacting with this world at a far more heightened aspect than we have. So why is it such a step to accept the spirit world? And in the early chapter, in about chapter 3, I think it is, when Marty and Jack are in the canteen, and somebody switches the television off, and Marty, who's already having thoughts about how Revelation could perhaps be developed to pick up spiritual energy, says, have you ever thought about what Revelation could do, Jack? The television wave, that guy's just switched the TV off. The television waves aren't, we can't see the television anymore. We can't hear it. Doesn't mean the television waves aren't in the room. They are. Switch the medium back on and it will be flooded with light and sound. And the analogy is the same to spirit beings being all around us now. People talk about heaven and hell. It's not like that, as I'm sure you appreciate, Lorna. They're around and about us. It's extraordinary the more you get into it. In fact, people who've had near-death experiences have often described it like walking into another room. It's as natural and as simple as that. And all these fascinate me. So my next book will still be of a spiritual nature. It won't be a sequel. I don't think I would want to do that. I think once you've done something,
sort of
leave it alone.
And a new thing will be.
It's done. Let's go on to new ground.
We've got another question from Brenda, who says, what is the best way to find a genuine medium?
Brilliant question, Brenda. Personally, I would always go through the spiritual churches. As I said, I'm not a spiritualist as such, but having said that, I do think that they will give you access to people who have learnt their trade, shall we call it, and I hate to use that expression, but it is. Or, depending on where you are in the UK, the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain will certainly put you in touch with people in your area. There's also a publication called Psychic News, and it's available online. They advertise a lot of mediums who might be from your area. But again, when you get in touch with somebody, ask them a lot of questions. If you get the impression that they're only in it for the money or whatever it might be, I would run a mile. Anybody who says, I'll give you half an hour or something, nope, sorry, I wouldn't touch them. You need people who are genuine, who are there for you, who care. After all, many people who go and see mediums are going because they've been bereaved and they genuinely need help, and need encouragement and hope and upliftment. So do be studious in the way you try and find them and who you go to. But I would always go through spiritual avenues to find them. I wouldn't go through, you see them, don't you, in magazines and things, these people advertising them, and they give them
Mystic Megan, things like that. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Wouldn't touch them with a barge pole.
Absolutely, I second you on that barge pole. I mean, in terms of yourself, Nick, is this just a gift that you yourself have, or has it run in the family? Is it inherited from somewhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, two answers to that. Firstly, yes, it does run in the family. My mother was extraordinarily psychic. In fact, she could see the young spirit girl. She died when she was in her teens in the house in which we lived many years before. And my mother could see her and knew, she said she was a seamstress who lived there many, many years before. But actually, that gift is available to everyone. Everyone has it to a greater or lesser degree. And children often will come out with things and will talk about imaginary friends and everything. And sadly, modern life and conventional upbringings, whether it's at school, whether it's in church, whether it's wherever it is, tends to knock it out of them. And I think that's a great shame, because as many of the people would have recognized in times gone by, that spirituality is just a natural part of life. It's just our birthright, and everybody can explore it or not explore it however they want. And I never tell people to do it or don't do it. I don't tell people how to live their lives. It's entirely up to the individual. If they want to ignore it, that's entirely up to them. I respect people of all faiths. I have people from all faiths who are friends of mine, and it totally doesn't matter to me what label they wear. It's the human being, it's the person I'm interested in, and whether they have a caring, loving, empathetic nature, whether they're compassionate, whether they care for the world, the animals, the planet, and look after other people. So but anybody can have that gift and develop it if they want, to a greater or lesser extent. But you really have to want to do it, and you have to know what you're going to get into, because you will have to protect yourself. I'm not saying, be careful or anything in terms of, woo, there's evil out there. No, but you should do it properly if it does interest you, and with the right people. And if you do, it's the most wonderful thing.
And I mean, you yourself, Nick, how do you work? Is it through seeing? Is it through hearing? How do things come to you?
It's both. It's both. When I was a young child, it was hearing first. When I was 5 years old, I could hear spirits. And then when I got into my early teens, I started to see them as well. And both times it's a bit of a shock.
I imagine it takes you back.
I read a bit. People think, but it wasn't. And because, of course, if you have conventional upbringings, which I did at the time, it kind of flies in the face of everything you're being taught in other ways. And so you have to be, you don't tell people what you're necessarily experiencing. But yes, it comes as both.
I mean, at what age as well? I mean, you mentioned in the previous question, at what age did you sort of, So I imagine at some point you'd have gone to your mum or your dad and said, like, I'm seeing these type of things. At what point did it become sort of common ground that you and your mum shared the same gift?
I couldn't put an age on it, but it would have been early teens, definitely, with my mum, because she would often share stories from her life of the most extraordinary things that had happened to her, psychically, for want of a better word. And so we started to have those conversations quite early on. Then I noticed one or two interesting books in the bookshelf, like The Teachings of Silver Birch, for example. And I thought, oh, what's that all about? Which, by the way, I think is a wonderful book if anybody's getting into spirituality for the first time. And so it sort of flowed from that. And then the more I sort of developed, before I'd even gone to the SAGB and everything, that's when I wanted to really question. I wasn't just going to accept things, because in every other aspect of my life, you go to school, you're told, right, this is the way things are, this is the way we view history and everything. You go to church and you're told to believe this or believe that, or you'll be a sinner or whatever. Everything around you bombards you with conventional wisdom, and actually at some point you rebel against that.
Yeah, you sort of break that stereotype of what's expected.
Yeah,
really.
and say, no, sorry, this isn't good enough. I want the
sort
truth.
Of more from it, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I want to, or at least I want to subject it to analysis and test it and see where I come out on this. Maybe I'll come out on the same wavelength as what I'm being told. Maybe I won't, but I will find my own truth. And I think that's the beauty of life. I hope people do find their own truth, whatever it might be. Now, for some people, that's going to be following a particular faith. And if it is, brilliant for them. And I respect it. And that's great. For other people, they won't believe in anything. They'll say, we're born, we live, we die, that's it. That's fine. I think it's a shame, because it's a nihilistic sort of view of life where
it's quite a tunnel vision way of.
If I had that view,
to...
I'd put a mask on and go out and rob a bank tomorrow, because so what? it's
what's
like,
the worst that could happen?
What's the point? What's there's no. And I think that comes down to, there is a kind of innate moral code that comes with spirituality that you realise. And the more you get into it, you think, yeah, if we're going to accept this, that we come from spirit, we are spirit, we return to spirit, then inevitably it must have an implication for the way we live our lives now. And that very much comes out in the end of my book Revelation, that when the discovery of the scientific proof of life after death is actually, I won't give the game away, but suffice to say that actually people have to come to terms with that reality and how it then impacts their life. And that fascinates me, because there are aspects that would say, would some people want to just take their life because they'd think, well, this life ain't exactly a bed of roses. I'm better off elsewhere. Other people might react in completely different ways, joyously. Other people would react with anger because it goes against everything they're being taught. And indeed, that's the basis of why Revelation becomes the cat and mouse chase it does, because those in power see it as a threat to the status quo. And they've got other things going on, like there's Project Scorpion, as people who read the book will find out within it, which is something that is politically happening and militarily happening. And how did all these things play out? It wouldn't just be a bed of roses. It wouldn't be a kind of, oh, great, everybody's on the same page now. No, it wouldn't be. People would react in completely different ways. And that's kind of explored in the book as well.
And I mean, I've got one more question now, and this is back to the book fully, and that is, throughout the whole writing experience, everything that went with it, what was your favourite part of all that? What was that part that made you just completely happy with the book, happy with everything, like the best part of it all?
The best part is how you thread all the themes together and make it all work. So there are all kinds of aspects. I wanted to obviously use the bedrock of a thriller to utilize philosophical, spiritual, religious, scientific thought, political thought, even to give a credible framework to what was happening. And then, of course, the characters themselves. I really took a lot of joy in creating the different characters and developing them and how they all interacted. But the other aspect of it, when people read Revelation, all the references in it, whether it be philosophical or scientific or spiritual or whatever, they all are all firmly rooted in the knowledge of today. So things that the great thing I think about Revelation, and you touched upon it earlier when you asked me whether I thought it might be possible that a device like Revelation might one day be created. That's the whole point about the book, in the sense that yes, everything is credible.
I suppose as well, it plants that seed within the reader's mind to then question whether, possibly could that happen? Could that be a thing? And
exactly.
That's the brilliance of it.
I hope it will, and I've had that fed back to me in reviews and in people who read it and said it really made me think and it really opened my mind and everything. And I think that's wonderful when you can read something and not just enjoy it as a rip-roaring thriller with a roller coaster of events and everything, and you can get involved in the love story and the humour and the characters and everything, but actually at the end of it to put the book down and say, wow, that really made me think. And that for me is so fulfilling.
Oh, that's brilliant. Honestly, it's been fantastic. We have one more question regarding mediumship, and that is, in the future, where do you think mediumship is going to be eventually? What do you think? Do you think it'll continue as it is, or do you think, such a thing as revelation would come into play? Would that all go out the window? would we not need mediums anymore if we had such a thing as revelation?
In a funny way, that would be my greatest wish, that revelation would kind of replace it. But no, you can't. A machine could never ultimately replace the human element. And I think you'll always need genuine mediums to help guide people and protect people and show people the right way to be in touch with spirit, even if you are utilizing a device like Revelation to do it. So, but yes, I've always kind of secretly hoped that something like Revelation would come along and replace us all, as it were. But having said that, you will always need that human element to guide it and protect people and just make sure that it's not used for bad purposes, because
absolutely, the wrong intentions with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, it wouldn't be difficult to create a scenario where something like Revelation could be used to for bad intent, if there were people who wanted to do that and could access negative elements on the other side, as it were. But no, I mean that's getting into we're starting to get into realms of sort of science fiction there, and that's not for me. The thing about Revelation is it is not science fiction. It is, everything is based very firmly in knowledge and the knowledge of today.
Based on the facts, I agree with
based
that.
on the facts, and saying a device like this really could happen, and I think it will one day. As I say, probably not, but there we are.
Yeah, not the very close future, but in the future. Well, Nick, it has been brilliant to interview you. It's been fantastic to read the book. I hope every viewer that we've had tonight goes out and gets a copy of Revelation, because reading it truly is a roller coaster of thrilling and emotions, and like me and Nick have talked about for the past hour, the depth of the characters and the depth of the story itself, it is something for everybody to truly enjoy. So,
well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me this platform. It's a great pleasure, and maybe we can chat again sometime about
Absolutely,
other things.
we would love to have you back, Nick, and I'm sure the viewers would as well.
It'd be lovely to do it, but thank you very much, and I truly hope that everybody, those who do go out and get the book, really enjoy it. I hope it brings you enlightenment and hope and fulfillment and and gives you something that just fills your heart with joy, that would be my greatest pleasure too.
Oh, brilliant. And I think on that note, we are about to sign off, although I can see Jared just writing one more question that I know he's desperate to say. Where can people find you, Nick? And I think that is in terms of mediumship and or book writing as well.
Probably the best way, I'm on Instagram. I'm very accessible. My Instagram is all lowercase Pease underlined Nick. So Pease _ then Nick, Nick. And I'm on there. I post every now and then, not a lot, but I'll probably post about this when that's finished.
Shout out.
Yeah. And I'm very accessible. If people want to write to me and chat to me, I will gladly engage. I don't hide away, and gladly share whatever I can with you. As I said earlier, I don't try to make people believe anything. I don't try to preach to people or anything. But if people want me to share my knowledge with them and just chat about things and their experiences and ask questions, I'm very accessible. So probably Instagram is the easiest way to get to me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So from me and Jared and Nick, that is all for Paranormal Living tonight, and we will be back again. Thank you so much for watching. And
Take
thank
care.
you again to Nick.